and burn.
Hey everybody. So tonight I am looking to discuss Steve Buscemi's 2000 prison film, and that is Animal Factory. Now look, I don't even know where to begin with this movie. This is like, it's a weird statement, but it's one of the grittiest, grossest, and yet most humanized prison movies I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, yes, there is a talk of rape at the beginning where three dudes are going to rape Edward Furlong's character, Ron. And later on, Tom Arnold is about to actually rape Edward Furlong's character, Ron, in the bathroom, like legit. So again, if you take issue with that sort of thing, this movie may not be for you, but the rape doesn't really go anywhere. The first one is all talk. The second one with Tom Arnold doesn't get too graphic, doesn't really go many places. And Furlong, or Ron Decker, he's saved by the teacher in the class he's taking before anything goes down. Other than the sexual assault aspects, which I always try to get out of the way at the start of these discussions about these movies, because I fucking hate rape in movies. And if you do too, don't be too turned off here because it's not really that big a deal. There are so many people in this movie. There's Willem Dafoe. He plays Earl Copen. And the movie is pretty much about him and Edward Furlong's character, predominantly. Ron Decker. Those are the two main focuses. But Danny Trejo's in this. John Hurd is in this. Tom Arnold, of course, plays a rapist in this. Who else is in this? Mickey Rourke. He plays Jan the actress. And Mickey Rourke as Jan the actress, who's a transgendered woman, who's, can't remember if they said why Jan was doing time. But it doesn't matter. And so, Jan has just about the saddest monologue, well, sort of monologue, in this entire film. It's one of the most remarkable scenes in any movie I have ever seen. And it's when Jan is relaying to Ron, who is Jan's cellmate at this point, and how her life has been shit, and how nothing good ever happened to her. And how Mickey Rourke says that when she comes back, she's going to come back as a complete girl in her second life. And how she's going to meet nice people. And they're going to be decent. And they're going to be good. And they're going to show her nice things. But the whole time that Jan is relaying this wish and this sort of fantasy to Edward Furlong, he's asleep. So he doesn't hear a word. And then he gets pulled out of the cell because I think Earl has set up the move for him at that point. And Jan figures out that nobody's listening. And that story about what she wanted from her future was just falling on deaf ears. And Jan, the actress, is just another con who's stuck in prison. And this fantasy of being treated like a real girl is never going to happen. And it's just about the saddest thing. It's my favorite scene in this movie because you can see the look of like sadness and hopelessness on Rourke's face. Mickey Rourke is one of the best actors, like, ever. And it's a shame that they're all getting old now. Because Jan the actress was so much fun, and that story was so moving. And that was my favorite thing about this movie, was it was such a humanized look at prison life. There's a touch of rape and shit, but Earl and his gang, who sort of adopt Edward Furlong, Ron, into it, they're like a family. They're like a real set of like brothers who are all housed together in the same cell, and they hang out all the time. They do heroin all the time together, and they're always looking out for one another. And there's a real family dynamic at play where there's no power struggle. It isn't like, Earl is expecting favors from everybody because Earl is incredibly well connected in the prison. No, it's just Danny Trejo and everybody. They're his buddies. They're like who he hangs out with. If he can help him, he's going to help him. And I liked that because despite the ugliness of this, and this, of course, was filmed in a real prison, Steve Buscemi employed hundreds of actual inmates to go out in the yard and everything. So this movie is not unlike what Oliver Stone did with Natural Born Killers a few years prior. And I love that when you use a real prison and you use real inmates, it ups the authenticity to such a point that, like, if you don't like this movie, it's probably because you don't like prison movies. And so it's just, this is almost not really a slice of life type movie, because there is kind of a plot, but at the same time, I could argue back that it is a slice of life because nothing happens here that's too massive. It's just this assault, that assault, an attempted sex assault, and then at the end, Earl and Ron decide they're going to escape, and they use these weight poles to stop the garbage truck from crushing them. Jesus Christ. Okay, and about the end, I just have to say quickly, how does Ed Furlong get out of that fucking truck? How? Like, I don't know how he's supposed to. He's all slimy. He's got spaghetti and shit all over him. How is he supposed to get the fuck out of the back of that truck? I just don't see that happening. He's going to get crushed. He's going to get crushed. And another person who's in this is Seymour Cassel. Okay? Now, Seymour Cassel, he would go on to become a Wes Anderson regular. He was in Rushmore. He was in Life Aquatic. And he would think he was in the Royal Tenenbaums. So he became a Wes Anderson regular. But for me, Seymour Cassel was a John Cassavetes regular. And he starred in two of my favorite movies of all time. And two of my two of my three favorite John Cassavetes films. He was in Faces with Gina Rowlands. And he was in The Killing of a Chinese Bookie. My third favorite film that he's not in from John Cassavetes is A Woman Under the Influence, where Gina Rowlands and Peter Falk turn in two of the best performances in the history of American cinema. My God. And Peter Falk's performance in that is often overlooked because Gina Rowlands steals the spotlight. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about Seymour Cassel playing like the head guard in this. Jesus, Adam, I went off there, and I apologize for that. What is this, 6:30? It's not too long. What else did I want to say? Yes, the prison is gross. This is a real prison, and this place is fucking disgusting. Don't go to jail. It's nasty. Okay, like, I've never been, and I have no intention of going, because I'm worried that I'm going to get raped. Not going to lie, I'm not that big. So, rape is a concern. And they're disgusting. They're absolutely gross. Oh my God. And so, I don't know, there's a real sense of friendship between Earl and Ron. You know, at first you're not sure if Earl's kind of taken Ron under his wing to turn him into his wife, you know, so he can fuck him all the time. But no, there's just a real sense of, like I said, brotherhood. They're really there for each other. And whenever I think of this movie, I always smile, despite its the ugliness that surrounds this film, that's all over this film. I can't help but feel that this is one of the more uplifting takes on prison life, just because of the sense of camaraderie and brotherhood between Earl and Ron and the rest of Earl's gang. And it feels like, again, they're like an actual family, and I really like that because it makes me feel kind of warm inside and shit. And I'm saying that about Animal Factory. Animal Factory makes me feel kind of warm inside. It's a fucking wild statement, but it does. It makes me feel really good. And I like how Ron gets to escape at the end. I thought that was kind of nice because he went to have his sentence reduced and it couldn't be reduced, so he had to serve out the 5 years. And yeah, this movie was amazing. If you haven't checked this out, definitely check this out, assuming you like prison movies. This is like one of the best prison movies ever made. Steve Buscemi nailed the direction, everything about this. A couple of the performances aren't perfect, but because Steve Buscemi's direction is so assured and so, like, it's like ever forward, and he's always kind of, you can tell that he's got his eye on everything, and it's like everything is moving at such a fun pace that this movie just comes and goes. And that, for me, is always a sign of excellent direction if I don't feel the time in this movie. And I didn't. Like, I blinked and this movie was over. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it. So, thank you so much for hanging out with me while I discussed the 2000 film directed by Steve Buscemi, and that is Animal Factory. Like always, if you like this review, or you love this movie, or if you think prison could be fun, don't forget to do something nice for somebody. Probably going to do something nice for yourself, because I don't think prison's going to be that much fun. I mean, it could be. If you could end up in a minimum security prison and you were kind of big, you could push all the nerds around, I guess. But you know you're going to end up at least in a medium security, and fuck that. I don't want any part of that. I don't want to go to minimum security. Jesus, this serves no purpose. So, yeah, like always, you kick ass. Don't forget that you are amazing, and thank you so much for sitting with me till the end of this, because I tend to ramble because my fucking brain is all scrambly most of the time, and all of these thoughts are being thrown at me. I do a relatively good job of getting them out coherently, though. Jesus, again, I'm ranting about shit that doesn't matter. I'm going. Thank you. Have a good night. And sorry.